Welcome to Virtual Lunch in the Exhibit Marketers Cafe. We are back after a week off. Or no, did we have a week off? I forget. They're running together these days. So no, we were here last week. Last week it was Alan and I talking about creativity. So I tell you, we're going to have a week off next week though for Thanksgiving. So it's a crazy time in so many ways. So as you come on today, go ahead and please say hello and for Thanksgiving next week. I thought it would be appropriate to share what is one blessing that has come out of this crazy year for you. And I have to say that you are one of the biggest blessings of the year for me. These weekly virtual lunches, we've been doing it for over 30 weeks now, since March. And I have to say that I know some of you have told me that you look forward to it every week. I look forward to it every week because this has been so wonderful for me to feel connected when we can't be together in person and we're not seeing each other at events. It's just been such a wonderful thing to know that I could look forward to seeing you, or well, maybe not seeing you, you see me, but I see your faces pop up in your comments each week. So, and speaking of, I see we have a comment. So LaJoy Plans, it says, being able to spend quality time with my parents has been the greatest gift. Yes. We've all learned a lot about quality time this year, haven't we? I know that for Alan and I, we've spent a lot more time together than we normally do, especially during those years when I was on the road a lot and going to, do trainings and teachings and attending shows and conferences all over the country. So, it really has been, it's been a blessing in so many ways. I think we've all learned a lot about priorities this year. So please go ahead and keep sharing your comments and we'll come back to that. I do want to share just a few links with you before we bring our guest on for today. The first one, and if anybody from Classic Exhibits is here, you'll get a kick out of this one if you've probably already heard, but Powell's Bookstore, which I've only been there once when I was in Portland, but it is a book lover's dream. It's this massive bookstore. And so if you've ever been there, it's really, really cool. But they came up with a creative idea for people who are missing being in the bookstore. They actually have created Powell's fragrance. So if you would like to smell like a bookstore, you can do that now. So, hey, we just got to laugh at something, right? It's like, yeah. But anyway, I found that one very amusing. So Mel or Kevin, if you're on here, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the Powell's fragrance. The next link that I want to share with you is another creative promotion idea. Whole Foods has teamed up with Progressive Insurance. Strange pairing, I know, but they're offering a turkey protection plan. So if this is your first year cooking a turkey, you might want to take out turkey insurance. So I'm not going to get into the details. It's kind of a crazy plan, but anyway, yes. I agree. A day without laughter is a day wasted. Yeah. That's why I always love to share some of these crazy, silly things with you, because it's like, you just got to laugh. I forget who it was that always used to say that, but you just got to laugh. But anyway, and I have to confess, I have never in my life cooked a turkey, nor do I plan to this year. Alan and I are not doing turkey for Thanksgiving because we are not big turkey fans. All right. The next link I want to share is, last week we talked about some creative, innovative retail ideas. Well, I've got another list of 9 creative retail ideas. And Alan is going to share that link with us. He's back behind stage again this week. But we've got 9 examples of in-store retail tech. And so a lot of them involve like virtual try-ons and things like that, or like being able to customize, let's see, it was a car, being able to customize the features on your car. but I'm thinking, why not take some of these kinds of things and see how you can incorporate it into virtual trade show exhibits, especially the virtual try on. Is there a way, if you have some kind of a product, is there a way that people could, interact somehow with it virtually? So, it's always good to get some inspiration from whatever source you can. Okay, the next thing is MPI recently held their World Education Congress, or WEC, in Grapevine, Texas, in person. And so they, so far, sounds like they had a safe event. I know there was a different event that happened a few weeks ago that they didn't have such a safe event. They had a few people who were diagnosed positive from that event, but WEC so far, good to go. But I found this diary of a WEC attendee, and he actually walks through from the time he went to the airport, on the plane, checking in the hotel, day by day, what happened at the event. And it was really interesting to see all of the precautions and the different things, both good and bad, of what he found along the way. Interesting thing, they did a health check every morning, and you got a different wristband each day. So you had to be approved to get in and out of all the events. They had QR code scanning. I know when Mel was here talking about exhibits, we talked about QR codes. So they had QR code scanning at each event. So you had to be, approved and show your wristband and all that. One of the things that came up, though, and I know when Samantha and I began our conversation, we're going to talk about the fact that, between masks and plexiglass and all these different things, he said it was hard to hear, hard to have a conversation with people. So, that's one thing to keep in mind. And so anyway, so it's just kind of interesting to read the whole recap of that event. The next thing, I see Rama is here from Lev Promotions in San Diego. And she says her blessing is watching my daughters adapt and grow with the situation. One is at SDSU and one is laid off from Disney. Yeah, it has been interesting. And I think that, all of us are finding that it's building character. We're finding, we're seeing people that are rising to the occasion and doing things that maybe they would have never dreamed of doing before. So, it is that, there are blessings in all of this craziness. Okay, so the next thing I want to share is a COVID-19 risk assessment map, and it breaks down the whole country, county by county, and gives an ongoing, predictor of risk factor. So like Alan and I were very relieved to see that our county is actually the lowest risk in our whole metro area in Kansas City. So that was a relief. But anyway, so it's done by the Georgia Institute of Tech. So they've put all these, pulled the numbers from different resources and put together this map, but it's constantly updated. So it is a good way, if you are going to be doing any traveling, or if you're looking to hold an event in a different location, it's good to kind of see how that area is trending. And then along with that, the Expo group has put together a list of resources that they call the Event Reopening Tracker. And so they have a number of different resources on this one page that I'm going to share with you here in just a second. There we go. So they have a number of different resources on that page. But one of the things they talk about that's really interesting is the Swiss cheese analogy, talking about how the precautions that we need to take are layered. So it's not like there's one thing, not like masks are the magic answer or whatever, but it's a layering of a lot of different techniques and a lot of different safety factors. So I thought that was interesting. And then I also want to give you a little teaser about, remember let's take that down. Our holiday gathering will be on December 8th. So we won't meet next Tuesday because of Thanksgiving week. We'll be back on December 1st with another guest. And then on December 8th, we're going to be back at the same time, but a different platform. So watch for, I will be doing a LinkedIn invitation. So be sure if somehow if you ended up here and it's not because you saw it on LinkedIn or it's not because you're one of our regulars, please be sure to get in touch with me personally and make sure that you're on the list so that I can let you know about December 8th, because I want to make sure that everybody is invited. But we will be in a different platform. We will be using, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity yet, but there are platforms out there that are basically roundtables, so that you can actually sit at a table and network. And so that's what we'll be doing. We'll have little groups and you can float between tables and all that cool stuff. It'll be a longer time. We always try to wrap up in about half an hour now, but we'll be doing an hour. And even if we go longer, it's okay if people want to hang around. But we're going to do some fun stuff. Alan and I will be sharing some of our recipes with you. We'll also have the opportunity, if any of you want to come on stage and say something or do something, we can do that. We'll maybe play some games. So it'll just be a fun time for us to just kind of hang out and, like, I celebrate and, just appreciate the fact that we're all still here after all of this year. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. And then 2 other quick links, and then I will bring on my guest. But I wanted to share because next week is Black Friday. So there's going to be all kinds of deals. I want to share 2 resources with you real quick. One is a site called AppSumo. And if you are not familiar with AppSumo, I've gotten so many great deals. They do what they call lifetime deals, and they will have specials. So I know next week, no, that's not the right link, Alan. Sorry. I made a short link for that one. I could just tell you, if you're on YouTube, it's in your description. If you're on Facebook, we'll share it with you here in a little bit. But if you go to exhibitmarketerscafe.com/AppSumo, you can get a link that will give you $10 off as being my referral. But what I wanted to let you know is that next week, AppSumo is going to do a Black Friday special. They haven't announced what the deals will be, but I think they said there's going to be 15 different types of software. And so I've gotten everything from, video tools to project management to some of the meeting apps, not the one that we're going to use in December, but, virtual meeting apps and all different kinds of things that have been great deals. So anyway, exhibitmarketerscafe.com/AppSumo. And then the next one is probably not going to be right either, Alan, if you're pulling the actual link. The next one is a service called pCloud. And I've always used Dropbox for file sharing. But recently I was working on a project and Dropbox failed me miserably. I was having all kinds of problems. So I started researching, okay, what are the alternatives? And I found this company called pCloud. And so they have a program where you can get, depending on, the actions you take, you can get up to, I think it's 10 gigabytes free storage. And then you have the ability to buy plans beyond that. So, and it looks like we don't have that one either. Oh, here we go. Well, there's the AppSumo one. So we got that one put up. So, and there's also a short link for the pCloud. So when Alan gets that, we will put that one up too. So sorry about that. Sometimes the best laid plans, right? I thought I was being just really slick by doing a short link and didn't work out so well. All right. So here's the other one. So there it is. So exhibitmarketerscafe.com/pCloud. And you can check that out. All right. So shifting gears. I actually have had some experience and some insights into accessibility issues for a long time. My mom has had vision issues for many years. And so, just the fact of having signage and graphics that's readable and legible and able to be perceived by someone who's visually challenged, that's been on my radar for a long time. Then a few years ago, one of my best friends had a stroke when she was only in her 40s, and it left her without the use of much of one side of her body. And she now uses a scooter, and she's had to learn all different kinds of ways of doing things now differently. So I've watched and been a participant in that. But probably the most insightful thing was a few years ago, I walked a show floor with my friend Joan Eisenstadt, which some of you may know. And Joan really opened my eyes to the challenges that someone who is in a scooter or has mobility challenges faces on a show floor. So I actually did a podcast with her, and I didn't get that link ready ahead of time, but I will share that later. You can find it on tradeshowinsights.com. But recently, Joan introduced me to today's guest, who is Samantha Evans, or better known as Sam, she likes to be called. But Sam is the certification manager at the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, or IAAP. And she works with accessibility subject matter experts and professionals around the world to maintain, build, and deliver accessibility certification programs. She facilitates the work of IAAP and the accessibility community to establish benchmarks of knowledge, skills, and concepts for accessibility professionals. She's also an accessibility and inclusion advocate, active in the association management profession. In fact, she brings more than 20 years of association management, meeting planning, training, and marketing to her work as a volunteer and professional at IAAP. So, Sam, welcome to Virtual Lunch.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Well, I'm excited to talk about this because we're going to talk not only about the physical events, but we're going to talk about accessibility in virtual events as well. In fact, let's actually start there. Let's talk about, because I think probably a lot of people, other than just thinking of, okay, well, I need to have closed captioning, but there's a lot of different things to think about in the virtual world. So share with us some of those kinds of things that we need to be thinking about.
So I think the default position is people say, I know I need to have captions. Or if they're going a step beyond, I need to ask if I have anyone who has a need for sign language interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
But the challenge with virtual events is that just the same as we expect to be able to get in the door at a physical event, having the ability to engage with a virtual platform is the first challenge. And so the way that people with disabilities engage with the digital world is in the digital concepts being accessible, meaning they can use their assistive technology of choice to engage digitally. So that means people need to be able to use the platform, get into the platform, choose the selection, and use their keyboard or speech to text or not use their mouse. So that uncovers a lot of underlying technology that may or may not be in place.
True. Well, and to be quite honest, some of those platforms are not that easy to navigate, even if you have all of the tools and the tech available to you. So what are some of the things then, as we're looking at platforms, what are some of the things that we need to be aware of and pay attention to in the vetting process, I guess you could say?
Right. So the first things to look for that anybody at a novice level can do is look for their accessibility statement on their company webpage. Search the word accessibility in their magnifying glass search engine. Ask for a VPAT, which is a voluntary production accessibility template. Whether they have it or not is a whole other story.
But if you don't know what it is, that's definitely not a good sign.
Well, sometimes salespeople don't know what a VPAT is, and they might have to go ask. So the question to ask is, to what level of WCAG, WCAG, what level of accessibility does your platform comply with? And more than likely, the sales rep will have to go and ask somebody. But those are the kinds of questions. But if you want to get beyond that, does your platform ensure closed captioning is provided? Is that automated captions, or can I use a third-party live cart captioner? And is it available in all session rooms? Some platforms only allow it in the main platform or the main exhibit hall, not in the breakout rooms. Do you have the ability to pin the window of a sign language interpreter next to the speakers that are being presented without taking away a display for speakers? Some have a grid pattern where there's only so many speakers that can be visually presented. So can you pin a sign language interpreter to the presentation? Those are some easy ones. Now, what they respond to on the first part is it's a whole other ball of wax, but those are the kind of things you can ask. And if your organization or your customer, your client, you're serving in meeting planning, if you have a DEI statement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, if that statement includes people with disabilities or people of all abilities, then your technology solutions should also support that.
Well, that's a really good point too. And just something that we tend to think of as simple, like closed captions. You and I discovered just having this conversation, getting ready for this, that the closed captioning sometimes that we think is automatic by some of the services it may be automatic, but it may not be quick. Like we discovered that Facebook is pretty quick about getting those captions up there for the live broadcasts that we're doing like now, but YouTube takes a lot longer. It didn't show up until like the next day. So, some of those kinds of things, there actually is, in fact, I was talking earlier about AppSumo. One of the things that I bought from them earlier this year is a program called Happyscribe. And I didn't get that link put up in here, but I can share that later. But Happyscribe is a transcript service where you can upload an MP3 or upload a video, and it will do, using AI, will transcribe, which I know you and I talked about, that the AI versions are not ideal, but it's better than nothing, right?
Except for in education, medical, and legal terms, yes.
Oh, yes.
It's not quite the same as horseshoe or close counts in those arenas. So if your content is delivering something that requires a professional education component, they should be accurate.
Well, and that's the thing. I know whenever I use it, I always go back through, and it takes quite a bit of editing after the fact, but it actually is faster, at least to get the starting point done. So,
and transcription products like that are a great way for somebody on a budget to create quality, accurate captions for your video content, and a great way to produce transcripts for podcasts. And all of that work, once it's in a transcript form, is a great way to pull out call outs for advertising and promotions and use for your other evergreen modes of communication.
True. And like I said, it's a great starting point, because then you can go back, you can tweak it, you can fix it, and it pulls the time codes, which is also really helpful too, because it matches everything up with the actual video or the audio. One of the other things we talked about, though, is that, yes, there are challenges with accessibility for virtual, but in some ways it actually is more accessible for some people. So I know a recent conference I participated in, there were a number of people commenting that, this is the first time I've ever been able to attend because, I have mobility issues, or, I'm not able to travel, and I can actually attend now in person. So what have you been finding as far as the positives on the virtual side?
The opportunity to build your audience and reach people who you would never be able to connect with is tremendous. If you fly, you know how tight airline passageways are on the plane and in the restrooms. You know that's not navigable, along with having to transport a wheelchair or a scooter. So there are people who or with personal care attendants, travel is cost prohibitive or not possible. So there are a large number of people, up to 27% of the US population lives with a disability, and worldwide at least 20%. And in the US, the population of people with disabilities is the third largest economic market after African Americans and after Latino Americans. So it's a really broad market with disposable income and market share that's ready for you to access.
Wow, that's incredible. I don't think most of us realized that there was such a high percentage of people that face challenges. I mean, because a lot of it's invisible. I mean, we may not realize that if somebody's in a scooter or a wheelchair, that's obvious, but there are a lot of other people that face disability issues or accessibility issues that we're probably not even aware of. So well, let's shift gears now and talk about the face-to-face, because as you and I were talking ahead of time, one of the biggest challenges that our new world presents is the fact that now everybody's wearing a mask. So somebody who is hearing impaired or relies on lip reading, what do you do?
So it's been beyond the challenges that we all recognize for our deaf and hard of hearing community friends. Masks automatically cover your mouth. And unless you happen to have purchased a clear mask, you aren't going to be able to see the person's mouth. So this is a real impact in healthcare and other things. But for exhibit on the trade floor, plexiglass is great at stopping the transmission of things, but it also stops sound.
Yes.
So there are a lot of opportunities to use assistive technologies like your phones to allow instant translation with technologies on tablets and those sorts of things to allow communication to happen using the assistive tech that we may think is kind of a fancy a trick. But iPhones and Droids both have live transcribe options to take in the audio, but it does make a difference. When you're in a large exhibit hall, there's a lot of sound and ambient noise that can also be confusing for somebody with middle range hearing loss. So it's not just profound deafness that causes a challenge. So if you have the opportunity and you're in an exhibit dynamic, consider buying clear masks. They are available. You just have to look for them. But it's a great way to show people that you've considered deaf, hard of hearing, and lip reading professionals in your audience.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, because the show is probably, the show organizer is probably not going to provide clear masks for everyone, but that is something you could do for your own exhibit team. If you had like 6-7 people in your booth, you could provide those clear masks just to your team. And that way, at least you would be, like you said, showing that you've gone that extra step above and beyond to try to be as accommodating as possible.
And as inclusive as possible. And
Yes.
I promise you, when somebody who is deaf, hard of hearing, or lip reads to augment their hearing sees a clear mask, they are going to say thank you a million times over, because it's just a piece of effort. But if you're on a trade floor or you're visiting or touring, it's a great way to be inclusive and remove a barrier, but keep yourself and the others safe.
Yeah. And like you said, it may not be the most ideal thing, but at least it shows that you made that extra effort and you went that step beyond. You also have been so kind as to put together this great handy PDF with a ton of links and resources in there. I mean, you sent me this. I was like, wow, this is going to take a while to dig through. But there's so many different things. I mean, you've broken it down. You've got, the virtual and the in-person. So Alan is going to share that link. I did put that up so people can go and download that. But thank you so much for putting that together, Samantha, because that just it's just a wealth of resources for people to, because I mean, we don't think about these things. We don't know, and we don't even know where to go other than just, start Googling. So I think it's so important that people take the time to try to investigate what are some things, like you said, just taking some simple steps that show that you care and that you're trying to be helpful. So talk a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, the effort that you make. So it's interesting, in technology world, it takes about 8 seconds for somebody who uses assistive technology to discover that a site or an app is not accessible to them, and they're gone forever. Malcolm Gladwell talks about blink, about that moment where well, when somebody knows they're not welcome, they're gone. But when somebody experiences inclusion where they normally don't, the opportunity to make a lifelong relationship with that person is tremendous. So just taking small steps to make some efforts can really make the difference in relationship building, along with being a good citizen and a good partner and a good corporate responsibility.
That's true, because like we said, it sends the message that you care and that you're trying. And I think probably most people understand if you don't have everything 100% exactly what it needs to be, but if you're trying to take some of those steps, at least it shows that you're first of all, you're even aware of the fact that there are challenges and you're trying to overcome them. But it also, I would think, would open up that conversation to where they could say, hey, this is great. I appreciate the fact that you did this. Have you considered adding this or something? And there's more of that conversation of, how can you be even more inclusive, right?
Right, absolutely. And those conversations, just like if you want to think of in, the business case for things, conversations are the place where things start and you can build from there.
That's true. Any other tips as far as, because we talked about masks, but any other things as we're moving forward into having face-to-face events again that we need to think of to try to overcome some of the current issues that we've been saddled with, I guess you could say.
Right. So simple, plain language, clear printed materials. Make sure your font sizes are not mice type where even somebody with a pair of glasses would have to squint. Caption your videos. One of the best examples I know for people in trade shows and in big exhibit floors is people who have displays of their amazing fundraising or outreach videos, and they're beautiful and they spend a lot of production time, money, and value. But on the exhibit floor, you can't hear them because there's so much ambient noise from everything else that's happening. If a video isn't captioned, you do not have the opportunity to tell your story as people are engaging on the exhibit floor. You've done the script, you've done the work, so the content is there. So consider the value add in captioning in exhibit trade floor deliveries. It's a lot more opportunity for people as they're walking by to read your messaging.
Well, and that's true. And that's true for anybody, because I know I have pretty good hearing, but still sometimes I can't make out anything a video on a trade show floor is saying. So.
Unless you're right up next to the speaker.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So yeah, you're right. It is, sometimes it's not that difficult. It's just taking the time to think it through of like, what could I add to this, or what extra step could I take to make it more accessible? So
and make sure your pathways, your entrance into your booth or a rounded table, the old meeting planning thing used to take a yardstick and make sure you had turn radius with the yardstick, but scooters and and some motorized wheelchairs take a little bit more space. So just make sure that somebody isn't going to look at your trade show space and go, oh, I can't get in there. Or if there's a raised floor, make sure there's a threshold ramp, because 1/4 of an inch is a trip hazard. So with tiles of carpets and other things for padded floors that make it more comfortable to be on the floor for 8 hours a day, make sure there's threshold ramps. Simple things like that will not cause problems, but also invite people to come join you.
Well, and the ramps need to be the right angle too, because that was one thing that I learned when I was walking the show floor with Joan, was that, there were some booths that had put in the little ramps, but the ramp was still like, she's like, I'm not going up that ramp, So it really...
There's rise over run, but like for a 3-inch threshold, like at a door, a ramp is going to need to be a little better than 2 feet long to be the right angle. So if you think 3 inches is almost 3 feet in length, you need to have it, if it's a maybe a 3/4 of an inch raised surface, or if it's higher than that, if you've got a platform, the ramps need to be appropriate. That can usually be rented from local facilities if your exhibit company doesn't have it.
Well, and again, it's one of those things that the thought needs to be there as you're planning the exhibit, and not just as an afterthought. It's like, oh yeah, we need to put a ramp in there. So I think that's the key thing. Wouldn't you say that it just needs to be a part of the planning process and thinking through and going through the resources that you've given us to see what are some of the checklists and the things that we need to be aware of, both virtually and face to face. So what's your final thought? What do you want to leave us with? What do we need to take away from this?
So 2 things. So there's a graphic on the PDF, and it features 2 people. On the left-hand panel is 2 people mixing batter and pouring blueberries into the batter. In accessibility, you'll hear the term, it needs to be baked right in. On the right-hand side, somebody has mixed the batter, baked muffins, and forgot to put the blueberries in, so they're trying to smash the blueberries into the muffins after the fact, and in the process, probably destroying the muffins as well. So just like you wouldn't put an elevator into a building after it was completed construction and tenants were moved in to then make the elevator, build your accessibility in your planning. So baked right in is a good rule of thumb for inclusion across the board. But when you're making an event, planning for your event, whether you're an exhibitor, an attendee, or an event planner, clearly state what accommodations and accessibility features you are providing, because that's what's being provided. That's not unique to any person. Second, list what accommodations that you are able to provide and be specific. And third, let those attendees, registrants, speakers know how far in advance they need to let you know what they need so that you can guarantee those accessibility features.
That's a really good point. I love your example of it needs to be baked right in. I think that's a great way to remember it is let's plan for it as we go, and let's try to amaze our attendees with how thoughtful and how well prepared we are with our booth, whether it's virtual or in person. So Sam, thank you so much for coming today and joining us on Virtual Lunch. I think you've opened a lot of eyes to all different kinds of things that we need to be aware of. So I really, really appreciate you being here.
Well, you're most welcome. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. And I work with a few thousand accessibility professionals. So if you need somebody for advice, consultations, or assistance, there are people around the world who do this every day to make the world a more accessible and barrier-free place.
That's maybe one of the best resources we've got, is to be able to tap into you and your network. So thank you so much. And I want to just remind everybody that we will be back on December 1st. We will have another guest on Virtual Lunch, and then be sure to watch for your invitation for our holiday gathering on December 8th. So I want to wish everybody a fabulous Thanksgiving holiday. I know it's going to be different this year, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. We can all have some wonderful, positive memories come out of this year. So I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. And it's so good to see everybody. I will miss you next week. I hope that back on December 1st, we can gather together, but then I am really looking forward to December 8th. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.